So now that I've been driving the car around, I've seen it make a pretty consistent like 2.5 psi at wide open throttle, and I'm just interested in making sure that there isn't some sort of new boost leak that's developed. So what I've done is I've found two PVC caps that are about like 2.7 inches in outer diameter, and I've shoved them into the 2.5 inch inner diameter silicone coupler, one here at the throttle body, and here is a Schrader valve sealed with two rubber O-rings, and that will be the intake tract, the charge pipe, all the way through the intercooler into the supercharger. And then out the supercharger, I've done a similar thing. This one has a small barb fitting, and this is where the MAF tube would sit. So my goal is going to be to basically pressurize this with some compressed air, see the pressure go up, and most importantly, listen and find any boost leaks that might exist. And the one thing I had to cap off preemptively is this breather hose that leads to the crankcase. I've used these hose pinching pliers. I'm hopeful that that's enough. But yeah, let's try this out real quick. So I'm just gonna add some air here. I think we only need to target the about like 10 psi. Ooh. Okay, that's quite a powerful leak somewhere. Alright, so the test proved to be very helpful. There was quite a big boost leak coming out of one of these couplers down here. I was just barely able to squeeze a wrench in there to tighten it. And then the other thing I noticed after fixing that is a massive leak out of one of the two ports right here, specifically this 3/8 inch crankcase breather port. So to fix that, I'm going to go ahead and take off the supercharger. I'm going to probably need to re-braze that one fitting. Okay, finally got the breather flange off. Nice. Alright, so with the supercharger out of the way, as I wait for that brazing to cool off, decided to plug just the two ends of the actual pressurized charge. Now when we pressurize this, we can see and hear a leak after a lot of tightening in a very difficult to access spot all the way back here behind this bumper. That is tight, and we're basically not losing pressure at 10 psi. So definitely a worthwhile exercise. Put everything back together. So now we've got a complete charge pipe from the throttle body all the way through the supercharger and into the elbow, which would be where the MAF is. So let's see if it holds pressure now. Okay, the answer is it's not holding pressure. There is a leak. But where? I wonder. Whoa, out the front. I didn't expect that. Decided to apply some anaerobic sealant, in this case Loctite 518. I'm gonna let that cure at least overnight and then hopefully repeat the pressure test. It's the blow-off valve. And crucially, no longer the supercharger. Alright, big news. Finally resolved the last of the leaks. It ended up being this flange that I had to braze two pieces together. Right here is just blowing out of this hairline gap. So I put in a different single cast piece. And yeah, so now the leak rate is very low. Let me inflate it up to about 5 psi. Alright, so I went for a few drives after fixing all the boost leaks in the intercooler piping, and I was seeing a slight improvement to boost pressure, but this phenomenon where I'd start driving and I'd see 4 to 5 pounds of boost, and then after about a minute, the boost level would drop to a max of about 2 pounds. So I suspect it's something to do with the car heating up, something like expanding or flexing, and a boost leak developing. Yeah, you can actually hear the hissing. This is coming out of the back of the supercharger flange, right around here somewhere. I just popped out the oil drain plug, and moment of truth. See how much oil we got in here. I'm gonna set the phone down. All right. Let's see here. We're hoping for 8 ounces. Nearly a Coke can. Right? No way. Okay, some's coming out at least. No. Alright folks, this is why you don't trust junkyard superchargers. This is like, what, less than an ounce of oil? It doesn't smell very good either. Man, so yeah, it's just been running bone dry basically. That sucks. Okay, got all the bolts holding the snout on the supercharger off. Okay, that works. Okay, this is not horrible as far as oil volume that came out. It's something. There's the coupler. Alright. Nice. Gonna bring some more. So yeah, here's the snout. It's got a bearing, it just spins like so. There's a piece that is very disgusting right now, a coupler. It fits onto here. And the other side of it fits onto the rotors of the supercharger. Like so. And those two gears that keep them in mesh. Nice. Okay, next we're taking off the gears from the front of the supercharger. It was held on by the same bolts. It's just another part of this. Okay, so the whole rotor assembly came out with that. Very nice. So here we've got two rotors, how they mesh. See a little bit of wear along the outside edge. Generally they feel pretty solid. And then on the inside of this housing, we've got those needle bearings at the rear. So those bearings are notoriously difficult to remove, so the goal will be to clean them of grease and then repack them with the appropriate grease. One of the next steps was to re-grease the rear needle bearings with some new supercharger grease. So made sure to buy the right stuff, gave me this tiny container, and yeah, just put as much in as would fit. So we'll see how that works. Alright, so we've I've got a layer of JB Weld on both flanges, all mixed together. While we wait for the JB Weld to dry, gonna go ahead and start putting this flange back together, the Supercharger. In the end, the rebuild kit I got included a few ball bearings that weren't for this Supercharger, so like just based on price, I knew I wanted the new like nylon coupler for the snout. I knew that I wanted new oil and a drain plug, so I ended up buying a rebuild kit for an M45 Eaton, which is a totally different housing, and as a result none of the bearings are the same as with the M65, but that whole rebuild kit was like $50 instead of the $200 M65 rebuild kits. And I purchased the bearing grease for those rear needle bearings separately. So yeah, essentially from that rebuild kit, I've got what's usable is the new Supercharger oil, a new drain plug, a new nylon coupler, and I think that's it. So yeah, I'm gonna go through, use my own, Loctite flange sealant here. I think it'll work quite well because the flanges have a lot of bolts spaced closely together. This is basically exactly what this type of flange sealant is designed for. And yeah, so this will go on this surface, which just needs to seal boost. It'll need to go on the other surface to seal oil. And yeah, then I'll just need to look up the torque spec for all the bolts here. We should be good to go. This will be enough for the outside, the next flange area. So just set that aside and smear it all around. Okay, so with that we've got the last of the sealant in place. Here's our snout coupler. This is a little bit stiff going on, but I think what I'll do is carefully tap that down, and then when we start putting the snout on, it'll also need to be tapped on. Alrighty, so now I've tapped that into the coupler. I think we're ready to start closing these gaps with the bolts themselves. For good measure, put some blue Loctite on the bolts. Alright, next for the oil fill. Need to correct, earlier I was expecting a full 8 ounces of Supercharger oil to go inside here. The actual spec is just under 4 ounces, so around 110 milliliters. There's 118 in this, so just gonna fill it all up. Wow, so clear and not disgusting smelling. Alright, so the JV Weld, the anaerobic sealant, the Loctite 518, has had time to cure, so it's finally time to reinstall. At this point, I think I'll reinstall it and pretty quickly do the same pressure test, make sure there isn't a leak still coming out of the back of the output flange. Okay. Look at that. Beautiful. Nice. Alright. Good enough, and then let's let the air pressure out, put it all back together. Can't seem to catch a break with this boost leak, and looking closely at the JV Weld, it seems pretty self-inflicted here, which sucks. Definitely should have let it set longer than the, I don't know, 6-7 hours that I did. So that's, yeah, it's a bummer. Okay, so that was basically a new speed run for taking the supercharger out. Not bad at all. It's just one clamp, pull 2 hoses, undo 2 nuts, undo the 1 bolt. So pretty sweet. And here's the carnage from running it before the JB Weld pulley set. Very unfortunate. Alright, starting on JB Weld take 2. I got both surfaces really cleaned up, and I've also added a channel, a groove, for the JB Weld to better cling to. To act a bit more like a gasket. I've got a nice coating of JB Weld. It's all pressed into that groove, and the same here, a thinner coating also pressed into this groove. So ready to slap these together and bolt them down, and then hopefully just not touch them for several days. It's all back together. Mopped up some of the excess JB Weld, and I think I'm going to leave this alone for like 48 hours.